Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopīna Vallabha Girivardhari Gopīna Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopījana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopījana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Viṣṇu Purāṇa Parivrājagācārya Ashtottara Sutta Shishimad His Divine Grace Oboy Charanaravinda Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Viṣṇu Purāṇa Parivrājagācārya Ashtottara Sutta Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Ramsika Ho Sri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shubhashri Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Kṛṣṇa Gopa Gopina Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Navadvitam Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shamaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gopamanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. So we're going to have a Russian translation. And she's going to tell me how to say it in Russian, and I'm going to say it in Russian, right? How do you say translation in Russian?
Перевод. Перевод.
Перевод?
Перевод.
Перевод. Перевод, русский. Перевод, русский. Is that okay? No.
Русский перевод будет доступен на волне 90, если вдруг кто-то нуждается. Или также можно вот туда, возле Тулси. Харе Кришна. Перевод на русский язык, если вдруг его здесь нет местного, будет доступен на 90 волне, либо возле Тулси. Мы делаем также свой перевод. Харе Кришна. Спасибо.
Me and Russian don't work well. I'm going to stick with Sanskrit. It's easier. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 30th chapter, text 42. This chapter is entitled The Gopīs' Search for Kṛṣṇa. Tato viśan vanam candra jyotsnā yāvad vibhāvyate tamaḥ praviṣṭam ālakṣya tato nivavṛtuḥ striyaḥ tato viśan vanam candra jyotsnā yāvad vibhāvyate tamaḥ praviṣṭam ālakṣya tato nivavṛtuḥ striyaḥ tato viśan vanam candra jyotsnā yāvad vibhāvyate tamaḥ praviṣṭam ālakṣya tato nivavṛtuḥ striyaḥ.
Namo
vibhāvyate. Word meanings. Tataḥ, then, aviśan, they entered, vanam, the forest, candra, of the moon, jyotsnā, the light, yāvat, as far as, vibhāvyate, as was visible, tamaḥ, darkness, praviṣṭam, entered, ālakṣya, noticing, tataḥ, thereupon, nivavṛtuḥ, they desired, striyaḥ, the women. Translation. In search of Kṛṣṇa, the gopīs then entered the depths of the forest as far as the light of the moon shone. But when they found themselves engulfed in darkness, they decided to turn back. So, Kṛṣṇa left the rasa dance, Radharani left the rasa dance, the gopīs are looking for Kṛṣṇa. But they couldn't find him because they couldn't find him. And it was too dark anyway, so they turned back. Purport. The gopīs entered a part of the forest so dense that even the light of the full moon couldn't penetrate it. This scene is also described in the Viṣṇu Purāṇa. Praviṣṭo gahanam Kṛṣṇa padam atra nalakṣyate nivavṛtuḥ saśaṅkhasya naitadidhiti gocharaha. One gopi said, Kṛṣṇa has such a dark part of the forest, Kṛṣṇa has entered such a dark part of the forest that we cannot possibly see his footprints. Therefore, let us turn back from this area, which even the light of the moon cannot reach. Magyānatimirandasya jnānanjana shalakaya chakṣuronmilitam jena tasmai sri gurave namaः. Mukam karoti vācālam pangulam gayate giram yakrpatamaham vande sri guru dinatarinam vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyeva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Sri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivāśari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now, we get to hear about the gopīs, what we came to Vrindavan for, to relish, right? And this class will entirely rain on your parade, so forgive me in advance if I do. No, it won't entirely. I'll try to keep it balanced. The first rain is coming now. And I don't know how Panchagoda is going to handle this one, but we'll fight after class. So, in Gaudiya Math, this is Gaudiya Math, we don't have to follow it, but just so you know. In Gaudiya Math, when they would read Shastra, when they would come to a section on gopīs, particularly Ras Leela, there was no lecture. They would just read through it to a section that was, you could say, safer, more applicable. So that's, I'm just throwing this out. It's just a thought. It's something to think about. It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. In other words, there definitely was caution. So much caution that it's not that they didn't read it, they just didn't talk about it, at least not publicly. And it's not, of course, it's not that devotees here are saying anything wrong, but I just wanted to throw that out into the mix as something. something else. Okay, so I have to give some backstory, otherwise you might kick me out of ISKCON after I tell you this story. But you haven't kicked me out yet, so I've done enough bad things. This won't be that bad then, I guess. We have some GBC here, they can decide. So there was a time in ISKCON, just so you know, that many devotees, ISKCON devotees, were consulting Prabhupada's godbrother. Some thought it was a good idea, some didn't. But anyway, I went there. And I heard from him. And one afternoon, he was giving darshan. This was Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Maharaj. One afternoon, he was giving darshan. And he always talks philosophy, very high. And he started talking about the gopīs. And he just went off. Gopīs this, gopīs that. And after about 2 minutes, he stopped. And he apologized. He said, "I'm sorry, I should not have been talking about the gopīs." It's like, whoa, okay. And then he stopped and he went into some philosophy. So, I guess you could kind of tell where this class is going, huh? We should be careful. I want to tell a beautiful story. This happened in ālakṣya. And there were some devotees gathering together to talk about, what do you think they're going to talk about? It starts with a G and ends with an S. To talk about the gopīs. So they invited our godbrother Achyutananda to come. And so they were talking about gopi bhav. Bhav means emotion. So they were talking about, what is the emotion of the gopīs? What is the bhav? What are they experiencing? Like we can understand it, right? Because we're so advanced. Let's sit down and discuss the bhav of the gopīs, right? Yeah, when you have no lust in your heart, maybe you will understand something. Anyway, Achyutananda, he's a classic person, so he gave a classic answer. He said, "You want to know what gopi bhav is?" He said, "It's when you get on a boat when you're 69 years old and you risk your life to come to America to preach. That is gopi bhav." Hari Bol. Yeah. So this is important, isn't it? So when I looked at this verse, I was like, oh, I'm going to speak about the gopis separation, like I'm an expert in that, right? So then I was thinking, some of you know that there were devotees once who were gathered to hear about the gopis, and Prabhupada broke it up because they weren't qualified at that point. So I was thinking, and then Prabhupada, you know, he said, you're not qualified to just hear the gopis. You're not on that level yet. And he said, because you're not on that level, it can have a disastrous effect on you. And then he said, but it's not that we boycott the gopis. It's not like Prabhupada saying, don't hear about the gopis, don't ever hear. That's all they were hearing. And this was, when was it, 76 or something? They were not that advanced. So I was thinking, so what did Prabhupada mean? So there's a doctor about an hour from here that some devotees have gone to, and he makes you drink 8 liters of water a day. You know that?
Yeah, the total does.
Yeah, and you put in lots of nasty herbs and poison and arsenic and all that, just in small amounts or something. But not everybody can take it. But if you can take it, it seems like he can cure anything almost, or sometimes. Anyway, you have to be able to take the medicine. Well, let's say theoretically, just to give an example to make it clear. This doctor can cure any disease, 4th stage cancer, 108th stage cancer, it doesn't matter, he can cure it. But your body has to be able to take the herbs, and we put some heavy stuff in it. Gunagari Maharaj was taking it, but at a certain point his body couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't take the medicine. So, hearing about the gopis is the medicine for material lust, for the disease of material life. It's the highest thing, but if you don't have the ability to take it, it's just going to make you sick. So Prabhupada said, purified by hearing or putrefied, if you're not qualified. Right? So that was Prabhupada's commentary on hearing about the gopīs. Qualified? Yes. So then, what was really interesting, some of you may know, I find this quite interesting. Our godbrother Garuda Prabhu, when he was going to do his PhD, he talked to his advisor, and his advisor asked him, what is the highest thing in Gaudiya Vaishnavism? Like, the highest. And he said, he said, Ras Lila, that's the highest. But then the advisor said, you should write your dissertation on Ras Lila, and his immediate reaction is, I can't do that. That's just like, I can't touch it, the world can't hear it, this is, it's not appropriate. Then his advisor said, has any Vaishnava written on Ras Lila? And he said, no. He said, so you're Vaishnava, who's better than you to explain it, so you should write it. So he explains this kind of medicine. He doesn't use the example of medicine, but he explains this apparent contradiction. It's the highest thing and we should understand it. It's not like we should boycott it, but we have to be qualified for it. So, he did it, he was happy he did it, but he did it carefully and with caution, so it could be properly understood and digested. So it's not that we're not trying to understand it and we're boycotting it, but we're trying to become qualified. So, I have a question for all of you. There's a song written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and the first line, the second stanza of the first line is Pujala Raga Patti Gaurava Bange. Have any of you, raise your hand if you've heard this song? No? One? Two. This song is very interesting. The history of it, the backstory. Do you know why he wrote the song? It's really interesting. When they were going to their new temple from Alta Danga to Bagh Bazar, they did a Rath Yatra, they did a yatra. They did kirtan, they took the deities on a cart. That's how they moved the deities to the temple. They didn't put them in a car. They did a Rath. And before that occasion, he wrote a song, and he said, sing this song when you take the Rath. So, rather than rely on my memory, I'll just read the translation. It's the second line of the first verse, I believe, that has become quite famous, often quoted, not so much in ISKCON, but outside in Gaudiya Math. And this is one of the things of 6 lines he wanted them to sing. And here's the translation. The servants of Hari are engaged in lavish affairs, handling material wealth and engaging all manner of things in the Lord's service. They worship the path of spontaneous devotion with Gaurava Bhangi. And Gaurava Bhangi means in the mood of awe and reverence, which seems to be a paradox, doesn't it? You're worshiping the path of rag in on reverence. Well, is it rag or is it on reverence? We'll find out soon. Don't go away. They worship the path of spontaneous devotion with Gaurava Bhangi in the mood of awe and reverence. And to show that the Ragapata, the path of Rag, above all, should be above our heads, they remain as servants, being a little distant and below, praying for that of a servant's duty, not for that of a confidential nature, not to bring that highest divine love down here upon their heads. Let me just explain one other thing. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is describing this, giving a purport on the song. Madhurya Ras, we preach about Madhurya Ras, we talk about it, we teach about it, but with great precaution. How do we teach about it? We teach about what it is not. It's really interesting. And one of his disciples said, when he preached about Madhurya Ras, 90% of the time he preached about what it isn't. It's interesting, isn't it? Hare Krishna. 90% of his energy was put to the negative side. This is not Madhurya Ras. And he would clear away the negative side. He had to spare, in his words, gallons of blood to establish what is not Madhurya Ras. So, when there was this problem with devotees who were just focused on the gopis, then Prabhupada was saying, if you just do this, A, B, C, and D will happen. And he wasn't looking into a crystal ball, he was looking into history. This is what has happened in Gaudiya Sampradaya by people who were unqualified. Now, if some new bhakta joined ISKCON, and then after a while he understood the philosophy and how you have to become purified to understand Kṛṣṇa Lila and Janati Tattva, Kṛṣṇa says, Janma Karma Cha Me Divya. Evam Yogati Tattvata. You understand in Tattva, you understand the Tattva of my birth if you have bhakti. So if you told them, do you know there are people who call themselves Vaishnavas who've interpreted the philosophy to say that you need to have lots of girlfriends to understand Ras Lila. They would be kind of blown away. I think some of you here are kind of blown away if you didn't know that. There are actually people that wear tilak, kuntimala, chapamala, and that's their philosophy. It's amazing, isn't it, how far it can go? It's pretty inconceivable. Although, we'd definitely make a lot of devotees if we preached that, wouldn't we? At least a lot of men would join, right? But for the wrong reason. One time, one devotee went to Prabhupada and he said, you know, every deity in India, there's some story around it. If you pray to this deity, you get this, like some blessing. This is the deity that blesses you with this or that. So I believe it was in Juhu. Can we, like, say, Rasa Bihari will give you this? And Prabhupada said, no, because we're not trying to attract people to ISKCON because there's some blessing. So anyway, I was just joking. But knowing all the opera sampradayas and where it leads to, Prabhupada was very careful and sometimes overreactive. That's one point. The other problem is we don't know what Prabhupada was being told. So he was reacting to what he's being told. And to get the whole story, you'd have to really talk to someone in the Gopi Baba Club to find out what was actually going on and what did they tell Prabhupada, because Prabhupada's reacting to what they're telling. And the Prabhupada was quite heavy, right? He was pretty much, and basically he said, this will ruin ISKCON, this will ruin the preaching, on and on and on. But we actually found out that there were many good devotees, and when Prabhupada said that, they just gave it up. It wasn't a problem. But Prabhupada foresaw it could be a big problem. So, as we know, at least as the disciples of Prabhupada know, Prabhupada was like a father, and he was very careful that his kids might get injured if they weren't careful. So he was always taking care of us, keeping us safe. So this could lead into sahajism, taking things cheaply, etc. So, what do we do now? These leelas are here. They're the highest things. They're the most relishable. I think the only logical answer is we become qualified to hear them. And until we're qualified, then what Bhaktisiddhanta was saying is, you worship Madhurya Ras in on reverence, and you take little steps in Vaidhi Bhakti. Little steps. You always keep it high, meaning I don't understand this. This is way beyond me. I never think I can understand this in anything less than a state of pure devotional service. So slowly, cautiously, I go towards it, very strict in my bhakti, in my Vaidhi Bhakti, and then I become qualified. And if we think we're qualified before we are, that's called sahajism. And it's dangerous. Prabhupada said it would ruin the movement, it would stop the preaching, and it would create disasters in many ways. Illicit sex would be part of it. It would be a whole problem. So, Hare Krishna. Is that okay? I'm not trying to say we don't hear, but we hear in the right consciousness and very reverential. If you can just remember that, this Gaurava Bhangi means reverence. And, this is interesting. Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a verse, most of you know this verse, where Mahaprabhu says that devotion is made feeble by following rules and regulations, that I like spontaneous devotion. So when these devotees were just hearing about the gopis, that was one of their arguments, that we should be on the spontaneous platform. Because Mahaprabhu likes spontaneous bhakti. He doesn't like following rules and regulations. You just go to Vaikuntha. And if you want the highest thing, and the gopis are the highest, so just practice rag, marg, and meditate on the gopis. Like, that makes sense. If you don't know what you're talking about, it could make sense. So, this verse of Bhaktisiddhanta, it blows that completely away. Because he's saying, do your Vaidhi Bhakti, become qualified. He said, and then you can practice Raganuga Bhakti. Now, there's an interesting thing, because this verse has been translated differently, and Gauranga Bhangi was translated to mean smash Vaidhi Bhakti. Smash it and just do Rag Bhakti. So even that was misunderstood. So the path of Rag, someone translated, the path of Rag is the highest. Gauranga Bhangi, translated, taking the word Bhangi to mean something else, means smash Vaidhi Bhakti and replace it with Raga Bhakti. But that's not what Bhaktisiddhanta is saying. He's saying, you must do Raga Bhakti. And at one time, he said, we would not live in Radhakund, it's too high. We would live in Govardhan because it's lower, and that way we could be respectful to Radha. We'd always... And then sometimes, this is also interesting, sometimes it is said Radha is in dasya ras because her only mood is service. She just wants to serve. So this is what he's saying. When you're in this mood of service, then you're actually qualified to hear about Radha and Kṛṣṇa. Otherwise, you try to imitate them. That's natural inclination. Kṛṣṇa has all the girls, men want all the girls. There's a problem there. So when you enter totally in the mood of service, I'm servant, there's no enjoying atmosphere, then you can enter into these leelas. Then you can understand, because you're totally in the mood of service. In fact, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, the holy name doesn't even descend. You're not even chanting it unless you're in the mood of I'm servant. I'm not the enjoyer of the holy name. I'm not the master of the holy name. I'm the servant. All I want is to be servant, not enjoyer. As soon as we think, oh, that looks good, I'd like that, we forgot we're servant. And then Bhaktisiddhanta said, one of my favorite things that he said that when a devotee realizes he is servant, then it doesn't matter what he achieves in terms of resources, followers, wealth. There's no situation that he can go into that would have any effect on him, which would move him from that realization that I'm just a humble servant. And that's why he always said, Dasosmi, I'm servant. And when he was asked, how many disciples do you have? And all you gurus, if you like this, you can use it also. How many do you have? I have 4. Only 4? I thought you had more. Yeah. 2 arms and 2 legs. My arms and legs will do anything I ask them. They're my servants. But I am the servant of my disciples. Only 4 disciples. Because I'm servant. So, he had many. How many disciples did he have? Anybody know? 10,000? 50,000, yeah. And he's paying obeisances to his disciples. Dasosmi. He's exemplifying this. Doesn't matter what you have. You know you're a servant, and then you'll never be bewildered. So unless we realize we're servant and we enter the Leela in that mood of service, I'm in a lower position. That Leela is above me. I will serve it as best I can. We'll misunderstand it. And we'll think we're getting something, some realization. we're not qualified for, and later on will crash. So we have to be careful. So some caution there. That's part one. You can walk out now if you didn't like it. Part two is not so. Won't be so bad. Part two is this is about separation. The gopis, or Kṛṣṇa left them. How could Kṛṣṇa leave them? Look at this God you're worshiping. The people who love him the most, he calls them out in the middle of the night. They leave their homes. It's dangerous. Their family is going to turn against them. And then they're out there. First thing he says, go back home. What are you doing out here? You know, it's not safe out here. You should go back home. Of course, they convince him that there's no way we're going back home. So he goes, okay. And then he leaves them. In the middle of the night, they're dancing and just like, you know, ladies, if you had dancing with a guy somewhere, you know, that you loved and he just walked out on you, what would you think? Saying, what a bum this guy is, right? Don't, if he calls me up, blocking his number. Debachi, aslishtava paratam panastam. Their word is used, debachi. What a bum, he walks out on me. And they're thinking, yeah, he walked out on us, but he didn't walk out on Radha, but he did. I mean, they were together, and then he left Radha. And then, not only that, he left all the residents of Braj. And he didn't go back. Like, how could he do that? That's like, and you're surrendering to that God? Are you crazy? Like, he's going to do that to you? And then, you read Bhagavatam, it says, if he loves you, he takes everything away, and you should just think, I deserve worse. You're worshiping that God. Are we crazy? Yeah, we are. Once Prabhupada said, they think we're crazy, but we know they're crazy. Yeah. No, we're crazy in a good way. So, I want to read some things that Prabhupada said because it will answer this. And then we'll explain. This is beautiful. This is from the Adi Lila 431 purport. The spontaneous attraction of Sri Kṛṣṇa for his dearest parts and parcels generates an enthusiasm that obliges Sri Kṛṣṇa and the gopis to meet together. To celebrate this transcendental enthusiasm, there is need of a sentiment of separation between the lover and beloved. So, Prabhupada's talking about the enthusiasm of meeting, but that enthusiasm requires separation. In the condition of material tribulation, no one wants the pangs of separation. Pangs means intense pain. But in the transcendental form, the very same separation, being absolute in its nature, strengthens the ties of love and enhances the desire of the lover and beloved to meet. The period of separation, evaluated transcendentally, is more relishable than the actual meeting, which lacks the feelings of increasing anticipation because the lover and beloved are both present. So when they're separated, they're thinking, when are we going to be present? The feelings are more intense. That's why Kṛṣṇa left the Rasa Lila, because he knew it would intensify the love of the gopis. And it's a little selfish because he likes their love. So naturally he'll do things to intensify their love. From our perspective, it seems like, oh, this is pain, because you read that they're in pain, or you read that Mahaprabhu is in pain. How do we understand this? What experience do we have? Nectar Devotion came out, I believe it was August. Was it August 70? You remember? Kṛṣṇa Bhakti.
Summer 70, I don't
yeah.
remember.
So Nectar Devotion came out, right? Summer of 70, something like that, right? So the first part of Nectar Devotion, that was good. And then we started getting into the sections on Ras. And it's like, you know, we're all new devotees. What do we know? So we're reading things we have no idea. And even now, today, if you talk about rasa and the different stages and the subdivisions, it's confusing. Bhav, Anubhav, and then divided and you know how Bhaktivinoda Thakur categorizes, divided, and you know, it's like, it's just, this bhav, vibhav, and sthāi and then there's stimulus, udipan, that's a division, udipan, and like all this, you know, it's like, okay, 50 years later, I'm still trying to like exactly understand it. I was in a class, we were studying this, and everybody was falling asleep. And the teacher was really good. It was just, you know, it's not easy to understand. So somebody wrote Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, we're reading this section forward in Nectar Devotion, and we don't understand it. Should we read it? And Prabhupada's answer was, just read it, even if you don't understand it. So we're reading it, we may not understand it, we're trying to understand it, we're in the mood of service. What is separation? But at least we understand one thing, that separation is a higher sentiment, it increases the love. And why didn't Kṛṣṇa go back to Vrindavan? He said, if I go back and then I leave again, the pain will be so intense, they'll all die. But he's thinking differently, that we're relishing in separation. This is how it works. So you have this story. Kṛṣṇa was in Kurukshetra, and the residents of Braj went there to meet him. Now this story is interesting, because one form of separation is when you're together but you're not together. And this is my visual of this story. It's not accurate visual, but I think in some ways it's a good visual. I've seen this. I've been to jail 5 times for Sankirtan violations, but I've seen where your relatives come or a friend comes to talk to you, and there's glass there, right? There's a glass and like a little speaker, and you can talk, but it's like you can't touch them. It's like they're there, but it's like, and you can't go inside and they can't come out. So it's pretty frustrating, isn't it? So that's how I see the scene of Kurukshetra. Like Radha's there, the gopīs are there, Kṛṣṇa's there, but he's dressed as a king. So it's like this, Radharani's like, Kṛṣṇa, this is not working for me. We got to go to Vrindavan. You got to, get rid of all these guards and all this royal dress. This is like not the Ras. So it is said that because they were together, but they weren't together, the feelings of separation hit a beacon. That was the highest form of separation, because they were like, she couldn't enjoy him. But therefore, that is the highest ecstasy, because it's the highest separation. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I want to either die or be buried at Kurukshetra, to relish that. So if we see it as what it is, then it's like, okay, that pain is beautiful, and separation, it doesn't exist, because in separation you remember Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa's absolute, he's always with you. Radharani's laying, dying, Uddhava sees, everyone's distraught, but it's actually ecstasy. Hare Kṛṣṇa. All right, I want to read a couple more because they're very beautiful and clear. And then we can have some discussion. There's so many more qualified devotees here. You've had to sit and listen to me. And you have so much you can offer. And you can chastise me, whatever you like. Whatever I deserve, give it to me. So this is from Adi Leela 4:108. Just as Radhika went mad at the sight of Uddhava, so Lord Chaitanya was obsessed day and night with the madness of separation. Those under the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can understand that his mode of worship of the Supreme Lord in separation is the real worship of the Lord. When the feelings of separation become very intense, one attains the stage of meeting Sri Kṛṣṇa. And these feelings of separation are part of the process, and as we become Kṛṣṇa conscious, our feelings for Kṛṣṇa become stronger, our feelings for Maya become weaker. As the feelings for Maya become weaker, the feelings for Kṛṣṇa become stronger, and they go. And then there's some emotion that develops. Slowly, slowly, slowly. And we start feeling separation. We know a little bit about separation, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, because we lost Prabhupada. So we know that transcendental feeling. I was in very intense pain. But our remembrance of Prabhupada brings us closer. I have to tell a story. Were you in San Francisco for Rath Yatra in 1970?
I was.
All right, so I'm going to tell the story. Maybe you don't even know the story. Or maybe you were at the airport. I don't know. Anyway, we have an eyewitness here. This is etched in my brain. I have the photograph. There's actually a photograph of when Prabhupada came to the temple and everyone was in the temple. There's a photograph of that. I don't know who has it. You can see us in our previous incarnations. So, this is August 1970. I'm guessing in August 1970 there were 22 temples maximum in ISKCON, and 6 of them were in California. Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I'll benefit of the doubt 22 temples. I think it's more like 20, 21. And how many devotees would you say? 500 total? Maybe? Max? Maximum 500. We're exaggerating here. 500 devotees. And I think at that Rath Yatra there must have been like 300, no? You remember? So more than half the movement was at that Rath Yatra. So it was the biggest assembly of devotees. And there must have been, how many brahmacharis? 100 maybe? Must have, well, if there was 300 devotees, most were brahmacharis, maybe. Well, okay, let's make the story better. 200 brahmacharis. And how many can fit in that temple? Maybe max 80 smashed together? 60?
Human beings?
Yeah.
Normal human beings? Probably 60.
Yeah.
50 at the most.
Okay, 50, 60. Do you remember that scene? Prabhupada came. Were you inside the temple when he came?
No.
Oh, okay. So then you're going to hear the
You
story.
can say whatever you want.
Yeah, okay. I have authorization from one of the most amazing storytellers who has the Hollywood license when he tells stories, and he's given it to me, so we're good. Okay. So what happened was, we fit as many brahmacharis in the temple as possibly could to greet Prabhupada. And every brahmachari was cleanly shaved, every single one of them, and everyone had these polyester dhoti, kurta, and they're very bright, like a peach bright, and there was no wrinkles in them because they were polyester. That was standard. And we all wore the yucky, the top, because Prabhupada wore a top because he was a sannyasi, so we wore it, right? And he never said anything, right? Uttariya. Oh, Uttariya. Isn't it yucky in another language? Yeah, anyway. Maybe Bengali, I don't know. Uttariya. We all wore it. So there we were with our, like, really effulgent dhotis, very bright. And it looked like everyone had just used floor wax on their head and like Fuller's Earth tilak that lasts for like 3 days. You know, it's like perfect. And then Prabhupada comes in he doesn't come in. He just comes to the door. And he just stands there and he's like smiling, and we're like, okay, what's going on here? Well, why isn't Prabhupada coming in? And he's just, were you there? No, it was East Coast. Yeah. So he's just standing there and he's looking, packed, all these brahmacharis. I'm assuming that's more brahmacharis in one place than he'd ever seen. That's why he was a little enamored by it. Stands there for a while, I'm not sure how long, a few minutes, just looking, relishing. And then he comes and he sits on this Vyāsasan and starts chanting Guru Vashtaka. Like, how often did he do that? On an arrival address. Have you ever seen it? Chanting Guru Vashtaka on an arrival address? And I'm sitting there, been a devotee 8 months, and I'm thinking, why is he chanting Guru Vashtaka? This is like unusual. Samsara Rava Nalalita Loka. It's this melody he was singing. Tranaya Karuna Gunaganatam. I'm wondering, why? This is going through my head. Why? And then a few hours later, maybe it was Madhu Visa or someone else, Prabhupada explained what happened. And this explains why he was chanting Guru Vashtaka. I have your attention, right? Yeah. This is interesting. My point was, that there's never separation, because you're always, the person you're thinking of, you can never be separated from. And Prabhupada wrote a prayer, Viraha Ashtakam, intense pains of separation in that prayer. But he's saying you can never be separated because you're always thinking of this person. So Prabhupada said to the president or someone, he said, when I saw devotees, it was, I don't know if he said it was amazing or beautiful, I was overwhelmed, something like that. It was an emotional experience. And he said, I stopped, I didn't go in because I called my Guru Maharaj to come and see. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Prabhupada's feeling intense separation, and he's always feeling that his Guru is with him. It's like both things going on simultaneously. So it's just the way it is. And now Kadamba Maharaj is leaving, and disciples are trying to deal with this, and Guru never leaves, but he's leaving, and it's like you have these two emotions going on all the time, just battling with one another. He's here. He never left. Prabhupada's here in his instructions, in his service. We feel him. The disciples of Prabhupada, many of us today feel closer than when Prabhupada was here. But we feel intense pain because when there's difficulty in ISKCON, we always think, I wish, Prabhupada, could you just come for one day and answer these questions and speak to this one and that one, and then you could go back. It's like it's intensely painful, but we feel very close. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, go premanandi, hari hari bo. So now do you want to, any comments, additions, corrections, questions? I'll let the seniors go first if they want. You want to say something?
Thank you for the class. You made so many points I wouldn't know where to start. I just said one little thing maybe to get to it.
Okay.
In the Bhagavad-Gita, Kṛṣṇa says, Vishaya vidivārtante nevarasya rasavarnam rasabhyasya brahma vishva nivartate. So our advancement depends upon our experiencing transcendental happiness, getting the higher taste. So from what I understand, for instance, Prabhupada said when we chant Hare Krishna, we should try to feel Krishna's presence.
Yes.
So when we feel Krishna's presence, Srimati Radharani's presence, they're completely overwhelmed with the mood of love and service. So we want to learn the mood, we want to experience the mood of love and service, then we have to experience the ecstasy of that love and service attitude. So that if we want to be happy, because everyone wants to be happy, therefore our happiness should be in trying to experience the happiness of experiencing Radharani's, Srimati Radharani's and Lord Krishna's mood of love and service. Then we can get the highest happiness. Because as it says in Bhagavad-Gita, we have to give up hankering and lamentation. But actually we can't give up hankering and lamentation. We should hanker to experience the love for Radha and Krishna, and we should lament that we're not experiencing it.
Thank you. Vishaya charirakabe shuddha vimana. How to get it? When you give up the Vishaya mentality of enjoying, and then your mind becomes pure, then you can taste it. I was telling devotees, maybe it was last night, I always tell them when I teach japa, like, do you have to sit for 2 hours chanting? Don't you think it would be good if you learned how to chant properly? You'd have a much better time. Otherwise, you kind of like torture yourself for 2 hours every day for the rest of your life. And you could be like Bhakti-yoga Thakur said, when I chant, I'm drowning in an ocean of nectar. So if you could drown in an ocean of nectar or just be bored, obviously, you should choose the nectar. Yeah. And we can, but it's such a paradox because you have to give up Vishaya, you have to give up the mentality of Purusha and become the servant, and you have to give up the desire to enjoy. So that's sometimes difficult. Yes?
I'm hesitant to ask this. By the way, I've known Mahatma for many, many years, And he's always had a sharp, but also very practical intelligence. So I really appreciate the way you were explaining things. I'm hesitant to ask this question for 2 reasons. I said I wouldn't ask you a difficult question.
It's okay. We have other people. If I can't answer it, I'll just ask you to answer it.
No, I don't. I generally am interested in the answer, and maybe it's the right place to ask. Because you hear in Vrindavan, you were saying that, you know, when we become qualified, you know, Prabhupada said, do the needful, you'll advance. We've always had it automatically. We've heard all of that. These, you know, you naturally, the path of bhakti, the higher rasas will unfold. Well, this is proof that ISKCON is the blue-collar wing of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And then Prabhupada didn't really give us the highest thing. Because here we are 50 years later, 5 decades, and you're still not into the higher levels of Ras. It's proof that ISKCON is not giving the full juice and process.
How do you know we're not in the higher levels of Ras? Just because we don't speak it publicly?
Thank you, buddy.
Then
Thank you for snapping me right back.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is not in the higher levels of Ras. He spoke the Upanishads at Radha Kund. You know. I was talking to Shruti Kirti yesterday, and he said something that really was beautiful. He said Prabhupada was very sectarian. He had his movement and his ideas, and he kept it contained. And he wanted it. And we all would love to sit here and, go off and, turn everyone into Raganuga Bhaktas by the end of the class. But how can we do that when Prabhupada didn't do it? And of course you could say, well, it was only 12 years. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta didn't do it.
So that you've given the right answer.
Yeah.
You don't know what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. I mean, look at Shivaram Swami, look at his books, come on. And so many devotees are on that level or going or want to be on that level. Like, this funny, I don't know if you were around when Shama Sundar sent this letter, you should only eat 2 cups of dal, 1 cup of dal and 2 chapatis. Do you ever remember that? We got a letter. Did you ever get that?
I remember the 10 only chickpeas, 10 chickpeas a day.
Yeah, 8 chickpeas. Well, we got a letter, and it said you should only, I don't know how, I was a temple president, so I got the letter. And maybe your temple president got it and burned it. But it said you should only eat 1 cup of dal and 2 chapatis for lunch. And then we got the second half of the letter, 2 weeks later after we were almost starved to death. It said, but if you can digest 10 chapatis and 10 cups of dal, you can eat that. And we didn't get the first half of there was another first half. If you can only digest 1 cup of dal and 2 chapatis, then you should only eat. So we got the you should only eat part, and we didn't get the rest of it. So it's this. This is the example of this class. If you can digest very high kata because you're qualified, we're not saying don't, but it's not something like we all chanted. We went on parikram yesterday. Do you know we all chanted 100 rounds yesterday? I'm not supposed to say that. You're never supposed to say how many rounds you chanted. And you're like, how did you chant 100 rounds? Well, we went to this place, and it was the place of Madhu Mangal. And there was a devotee named Madhu in Chaitanya Lila, and the Baba there, the Goswami there said, if you chant 1 round, it's worth 100. So I told the devotees, tell everybody you chant 100 rounds. And then I said, actually, if you tell everyone you chant 100 rounds, you just lost the benefit. You never reveal your position. So naturally, devotees, I don't know anything. I'm not qualified to understand these things. And Prabhupada never told us who he was in the spiritual world. It wasn't important. If it were important, he would have told us, right? So how do you know? How do you know who's... But we have a movement. Prabhupada sheltered us. He wanted it a certain way. And Mahaprabhu also didn't publicly speak on high things, only with intimate associates. And, when the guru feels the disciple is qualified, let it loose. You know, I had a disciple. She came to, she chanted 64 rounds. She came to me and said, I want to practice Raganuga Bhakti. Can you help me? How should we do this? I consulted other devotees who are practicing it, who know more. And testing, are you qualified? And basically she is. So, all right, great. But do we advertise that? We have people who do that? No. Hare Krishna. But, remember that story? Sridhar Maharaj was speaking about the gopīs and he stopped himself and he apologized. That's pretty heavy. That says a lot to me. Yes?
Just to confirm, excellent answer, by the way. Excellent answer. We were in Los Angeles. I was a time bhakti, as I still am. And Prabhupada would come every day and offer his obeisances, small brother Rukmini Dormina, and then take prasada, take charna, take siddhans, vyasas. We would all bow down as Prabhupada was sitting on his vyasasana. And he was teaching his Striyaḥ Upanishad. So he would start, as we were still bowing down, you know, Om Pranam, that voice of the ages, Prabhupada's voice would go out. And this one particular day, everything happened as normal. Prabhupada sat down, we bowed down, and we were just used to hearing that. We'd come up and hearing Prabhupada. Nothing. And Prabhupada was sitting up straight. And it was quiet. And he looked, and tears, Prabhupada's cheeks were wet with tears. They were streaming down his. And then we watched Prabhupada, and he just literally took a breath and just pushed it all down. And then began with Om. And later on, I think it was Nanda Kumar, said, Prabhupada, what should we do when that happens? And Prabhupada apologetically said, I don't do it very often. He didn't well, I'm sorry, I was lost in, you know, but it was none of that business. It had gotten, and he was actually, I was thinking of Daruka when he was fanning Kṛṣṇa and the ecstatic symptoms got in the way. Prabhupada was angry that those symptoms were in the way of his job. So it's right in comports with your answer.
One time Srila Bhaktisiddhanta fell off his chair in public. Ecstasy. Jivananda, you wanted to say something?
No, he was just holding it up.
Oh, okay. Prahladananda Maharaj wants to say something.
Generally, these challenges about who's on what platform is really born out of material consciousness. Because, as Kṛṣṇa says in the Bhagavad-Gita, everyone has their duty to perform. And if we do that duty, and of course, there's two types of duties. There's the duty given by Varna Ashram, and then there's the duty given by the spiritual master. So we're given the duty of the 9 different processes of pure devotional service, plus we're given 5 powerful processes by Srila Rupa Goswami, such as chanting Hare Krishna, worshipping the deities, studying Srimad Bhagavatam, serving the devotees, and living in a holy place, or preaching, making the place holy. So anyone who's engaged in those processes, his life is perfect, is becoming perfect. And to think that there's some competition, who's perfect, and everyone else is somehow or another on a lower level, that's simply a material concept of life. Because ultimately, as it says, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhukavanoy, Shravanani Shudachiti Karya Udoy. Everyone is already perfect. They're already transcendental, liberated souls. But due to being covered by ignorance, we've forgotten our original nature. And by the mercy of our acharyas and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we're given a chance to uncover our perfection again. So to think that we're perfect and you're not perfect, it's simply a material conception of that.
And we always had this from the early days in ISKCON. Somebody would hear from somebody very high and would say, you in ISKCON are not getting it. That was going on long, with the 80s.
Oh, no.
Before that.
Since the very beginning.
in '69 when I was,
Who were they hearing from?
It's,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
in '69 when I was in Buffalo, Srila Prabhupada called up the temple. Actually, the servant Aravinda called and spoke to Rupa Nugavru. Srila Prabhupada talked to Rupa Nugavru. And Srila Prabhupada said that they're trying to take the movement over, come to LA. As it turned out that even from the very beginning, some of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers were critical of him, thinking that he was something of another platform than they were on. So, from the very beginning of our society, practically speaking, there was this conflict going on.
It's interesting because along the lines of that philosophy is you need the presence, living presence of a Mahabhagavad. So that kind of pushes Prabhupada kind of in the background because you need somebody else. Like he's not good enough for you. Like our Sangha is not good enough. Prabhupada's books and teachings are not good enough. His process is not good enough. You need somebody today live on that platform. And what if you don't have somebody? You're going to vote somebody in?
Could you tell me where Srila Prabhupada said that you need someone?
Yeah, exactly.
Mahabhagavad?
Yeah, he didn't.
Where?
He never said it. No, I'm saying other people. I'm saying outside of ISKCON they say that. Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. No, I was glad he spoke up. He thought I said that. So like if I did say that and no one spoke up, you're all bogus. You should speak up, yeah.
He reasons ill who thinks that Vaishnavas died, but it's now our living still in sound.
Yeah.
That Vaishnavas lives to die and living spread the holy name around.
You know, one devotee asked Prabhupada, it's on the Prabhupada Memories, after you go, how will you instruct us? And he said, I will come in dreams and I will guide you from within the heart.
And from within the heart?
Yeah, within the heart. I'll come in dreams and I'll guide you from within the heart. So, it's like Prabhupada left, he's gone, he abandoned us, you have to find somebody else. No, it doesn't work that way. There's no movement if that's how it's going to go. Then you have to vote on the next acharya and have fights and go to court, and the whole thing is going to just repeat itself. Yes.
In the Bhagavad-Gita, 1857, Srila Prabhupada writes that if Kṛṣṇa is not present, like he was with Arjuna, how will we understand what Kṛṣṇa wants? So Srila Prabhupada writes that if one follows Kṛṣṇa's instructions in this book, as well as the guidance of the representative of Kṛṣṇa, then it's as good as being Kṛṣṇa and being right there.
Good. I think we should end on that happy note, if that's okay. Yes. Can we end now? Yes, good. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Radha Shyama Sundar ki jai, Krishna Balaram ki jai, Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.